Hi guys, today you're joining me at the prolific Meadowlands fishery. I'm having a day fishing the feeder and I just want to talk to you about the types of feeder and what a big difference they can make on the way you're fishing and what fish you're catching. Now, to start the session, I would always start with a cage feeder, a standard cage, like a 3-hole cage feeder. I'm fishing for skimmers here at Meadowlands, and the reason I start with that is, I'm just going to fill the feeder up, is that feeder is quite open. This is going to, as it falls through the water, virtually all that ground bait is going to come out of the feeder, which is going to cause column and hopefully pull the fish down. Now it's probably 12, 13, possibly 14 foot deep where I'm fishing here today. And these fish, in this cold weather that we've had recently, are not going to be on the bottom. They'll be sitting mid-water, but they'll be hungry, they've not been fed. So the idea of fishing an open cage to start with the ground bait lightly pushed in, is to create that column going through the water and drag them fish down to the baited area at the bottom. Once I've got the fish in my swim, and I'll use the feeder and the indications on my tip to let me decide, A, if I'm catching fish and I'm not missing bites and I'm not getting many liners, then I'll stay on this feeder. But a lot of the time you have to change the feeder you're on to make yourself get positive bites. Once I'd used the general cage, normal open cage like that, I would then, the next port of call would be to change to a feeder that is semi-solid, only a few holes in it, but less ground bait will come out the feeder as it's falling through the water, hence creating more ground bait coming out on the bottom. Now again, you use types of feeder to determine and see what's happening with your tip. If you're fishing braid or mono, the reaction you're getting from the fish will help you make your decisions of what feeder to use and what to do next. Once I try this feeder, if I'm still getting lots of liners and I'm not getting proper positive bites, that's telling me that the fish are attacking my feeder, which is also then telling me that too much bait is coming out of my feeder. The fish are active and they're attacking the feeder to get to the bait. Now, as my feeder has fallen through the water, particles and pieces of worm and dead red max have fallen out of my feeder. So to try and eliminate this, I would then switch to a completely taped up feeder. As you can see, there's no holes in it whatsoever. And once I push the ground bait into there, it will go in like a brick. Now, as you can see there, that is in there solid. And you can see how hard I have to push to get that out. Now, what that will mean then is, as the feeder falls through the water, there'll be nothing coming off of that feeder. Obviously, I'm going to push the ground bait in hard because I don't want nothing coming off of it. And the idea of that is that because nothing's falling off of my feeder as it goes through the water, the fish are in my peg because they've told me using the previous feeder that there's lots of fish there. But by using a taped up feeder, and there's no other particles coming off that feeder as it falls through the water and falls through them fish that will be feeding just off bottom. And what this does is, because there's nothing falling through the water, and the only piece of bait that's falling through your water following that feeder will be your hook bait. Now the fish will then have to attack that feeder to get to your bait, and then it all comes down to, again, is changing the size of your hook length. If you're fishing a taped up feeder, you're encouraging the fish to attack your feeder. And if you're encouraging, it's no different to the method. If you're encouraging fish to attack your feeder, because whilst you've been fishing and getting liners and you're not getting proper bites, you are now pinning them fish down to attack that solid feeder that's got no bait coming out of it. Then you change to a really short hook length. You put your hook bait near that feeder, because them fish are attacking that solid feeder to get the bait that's in your feeder, and your hook bait will only be that far from your feeder. Very similar to method, but that's the difference between fishing a solid cage and an open cage, and a semi-open cage. It's picking the right feeder to get proper bites. Today has been a simple feeder fishing session. I started by just mixing up half a bag of F1 Dark on its own. It's perfect on its own for these skimmers. They love F1 Dark. And the importance of changing your feeder has been so paramount today. I've started with an open cage and I've had 10 skimmers in 10 chucks as quick as I could get it out there with a 30cm hook length. Now after them 10 fish, all of a sudden I was getting more indications than I was getting previously, but I wasn't getting a proper bite. And what that was telling me is that the fish were in a bit of a frenzy and they were attacking the feeder and giving me false bites, liners. I then moved on to a semi-closed feeder with only a few holes. It was a hex mesh cage with, I would say, what's that, 8-10 holes in that, but semi-closed, so that not all the bait would come out as it fell through the water. Again, that gave me, as soon as I changed to that, again with a 30cm hook length, that gave me another 7 or 8 fish quite quickly. And then again, all of a sudden, the fish got scatty and I was getting more liners. I wasn't getting a positive bite. The tip was being pulled round and I wasn't putting a fish in the net. But that was telling me again then, but I needed to pin them fish down. So, as I spoke about previously, I've then gone onto a completely taped up feeder and pushed the ground bait in really hard. Hence, that the only way the fish could get to that bait, and they were hungry, the only way to get to that bait was to attack that feeder. But by changing to a taped up feeder, you also had to change the length of your hook length. I then changed to a 6-inch hook length, 15 centimetres, with a taped up feeder. And a little tip if you're going to do the taped up feeder is to fish a slack line. Because if you fish a tight line, the bites you get, don't forget these fish are attacking your feeder and your bait could be that far from your feeder. They are ravenous, they're attacking that feeder, trying to get that bait inside that taped up feeder, and they will see a single maggot, and single maggot are always best when you're fishing a taped up feeder. They will pick up that bait and just bolt with it. So if you fish with, bearing in mind as I said, it's only a small hook length, it's very similar to the bites you get on the Method, and there's lots of fish in your peg. As soon as I pick that hook bait up, because it's only a short hook length, they will bolt. So if you're going to change to a taped up feeder, make sure you change to a shorter hook length. Nothing is nothing is set in stone, but that's what I found in my feeder fishing sessions. If I change to a taped up feeder, a shorter hook length is better with a single hook bait.